Welcome to the second installment of a very special episode of Ibble Dibble, Shredding the Cut. I'm calling this chapter West Egg. My first glimpse of Meghan in this new chapter is her crouched in the entryway, arms wrapped around her black lab Pula, Setswana for rain and good fortune and a tribute to an early date during the couple's whirlwind romance in 2016. She's pointing out that their courtship was very short enough for Meghan to trick Harry, if you will, into believing she was someone she is not. The front doors are thrown wide open, as are the doors leading out to the backyard. She stands and smiles with the perfect level of warmth, the gleam of her teeth rivaled only by the shininess of her blowout. Backlit by the late morning light in a scene that looks like a Nancy Meyers cinematic interior, Town and Country, Goop, and Architectural Digest had an orgy and created the perfect moment in California living. She throws her arms wide open, too, and gives me a hug. "Come on through," she says, beckoning me to join her on one of many terraces. She's reminding us of how superficial Meghan is. Supposedly, this is a casual day at home, but a perfectly primed Meghan clearly planned her light, knows her angles, hit her mark, and delivered her line. And I must comment on the weirdness of Meghan insisting on hugging people she's never met. This is not an American thing, this is a Meghan thing. This passage doesn't portray Meghan as being genuinely warm. It portrays Meghan as being something of a sociopath who has witnessed genuine warmth and is trying to emulate it. Also, the phrase "come on through" is odd. Americans say "come on in." Servants say "come through, please." This is a weird amalgamation where I think Meghan is trying to seem welcoming, but also trying to signal her status, and it is not working. I get strong Great Gatsby vibes from this scene, and Meghan is Gatsby, not Daisy. The Montecito house is the kind of big that startles you into remembering that unimaginable wealth is actually someone's daily reality. It evokes a classic Tuscan villa, a Napa vineyard, and a manicured Beverly Hills country club, decorated with careful, considered coastal tones for a casual air, the home equivalent of billionaires dressing down in denim. The author is not doing much to promote her as the people's princess here, is she? The description of the house is also a backhanded compliment. She makes it sound like a tacky McMansion cobbled together from unrelated architectural styles, which it is. It's a monstrosity built by a Russian oligarch that sat on the market for years. If they had any taste, they'd be living in a 1910s or 1920s estate once owned by a founder of Hollywood, but they don't. Finding a house to start their new life wasn't easy, Meghan tells me. We were looking in this area. She's referring to Montecito, the Tony Beachside hamlet north of Los Angeles. And this house kept popping up online in searches. At first, they'd resisted going to visit. We didn't have jobs, so we just were not going to come and see this house. It wasn't possible. It's like when I was younger and you're window shopping. It's like, I don't want to go and look at all the things that I can't afford. That doesn't feel good. How utterly humbled we all are when confronted with a depressingly aspirational Zillow hunt. At this point, Allison P. Davis is just going in on Meghan. First, to be clear, Montecito is not just north of Los Angeles. It's a 2.5 hour drive, the kind of place people only move if they don't plan on doing business in LA frequently, or if they're the kind of billionaire that shamelessly takes 15-minute private jet flights. I think H&M have proven themselves to be the latter. And to imply that they weren't looking at buying a house because they didn't have jobs, how ludicrous. Meghan has had exactly 2 jobs in her life. 3 if we count Humphrey Yogart. At this point, she hadn't had a job in years. She was simply overeager to spend way more of Harry's inheritance than was practical. They could have found a perfectly lovely house in a perfectly lovely neighborhood with 0 security concerns for $3 or $4 million. The desire to spend over 3 times that much comes from Meghan's need to project her superiority by living in conspicuous luxury, not any practical concerns around security or education for their children. The sarcasm, how utterly humbled we all are. They did eventually tour it and fell almost immediately in love. And since they have income now, in the form of a reported $25 million Spotify deal and a reported $100 million Netflix deal, it's within their means. Meghan stops to point out 2 massive Dr. Seussian palm trees dead center on a lawn so verdant it's better not to consider the water bill. which is a huge issue in California. People have water allowances. Celebrities are frequently named and shamed for wasting water. And celebrities like Meghan and Harry, who tell everybody else to change their habits to slow climate change, are extremely hypocritical for maintaining gardens like this. One of the first things my husband saw when we walked around the house was those two palm trees, she coos. See how they're connected at the bottom? He goes, "My love, it's us." And now every day when Archie goes by us, he says, "Hi, Mama. Hi, Papa." They had toured only the grounds when they told the real estate agent, "We have to get this house," Meghan says. It didn't matter that they hadn't seen the inside. Meghan gestures to the sweep of the property from chicken coop to pool house to main house. Eventually, they purchased it for $14.65 million. "We did everything we could to get this house." She leans her head back and lets the sun beam down into her pores. "Because you walk in and go," she takes a deep inhale through her nose and breathes out her mouth. "Joy. And exhale. And calm. It's healing. You feel free." It's so clear in this paragraph that Meghan really has no idea how she comes off. They were having trouble affording a house, but then decided to buy one without even assessing if the interior required renovation. She was obsessively performing online searches, like your average Joe not working with an elite real estate broker, but then made her decision based on two palm trees in the yard. She wants us to believe she couldn't find a soothing environment for any less than $15 million. Even if she and Harry have stepped back from their royal duties, Meghan is still very aware that people see her as a princess. It's important to be thoughtful about it because, even with the Oprah interview, I was conscious of the fact that there are little girls that I meet and they're just like, "Oh my God, it's a real life princess." But her ambitions for herself and the little girls who look up to her are more than to marry into a position. I just look at all of them and think, you have the power within you to create a life greater than any fairy tale you've ever read. I don't mean that in terms of you could marry a prince one day. I mean, you can find love, you can find happiness, you can be up against what could feel like the greatest obstacle, and then you can find happiness again. Counterpoint, no little girls think of Meghan as a princess. Meghan is no longer a part of the royal family. Meghan is no longer photographed with the royal family. Meghan doesn't live in the UK, and Meghan can't sell papers. So she doesn't get tabloid covers or piles of press she hasn't paid for. She's also only been a princess for 4 years now. I think far fewer little girls recognize her on sight than she imagines. Also, it's stunning how she seems to believe that her life is greater than any fairy tale she's ever read, and that she's overcome great obstacles to find love and happiness. Anyone who's read Revenge knows that she has always been financially supported by a man in her life to achieve whatever little she's achieved, mostly just connecting with men of ever higher wealth and status. To proffer the white knight fantasy to children is actively regressive, actively anti-feminist, very much counter to her brand. So why does she keep doing it? Meghan's Harry, or H as she calls him in anecdotes, or my love as she refers to him when he's standing in front of her, as he is now in navy blue athletic shorts, a t-shirt, and no shoes, has appeared from somewhere in the house to say hello. I stand up, instantly understanding the confusion Meghan must have felt when she first met the royal family. Am I supposed to shake his hand or bow or curtsy or salute? Do I call him Prince Harry, the royal formerly known as Prince, ex-Prince Harry, the Duke, Sir, Mr. Wait, does he have a last name? As if to preempt any attempts I might make at curtsying, Harry extends his hand to shake mine and welcomes me to their home. It's very beautiful, I assure him, not calling him anything at all. We're fixing all these things, the pipes, but that's a whole story in itself, Harry explains, exasperated. So this is another very funny criticism of Meghan. Obviously, Meghan has asked Harry to make short, casual appearances during all of her interviews because she's nothing without him. No one cares about Meghan Markle. People only care about the wife of Prince Harry. And obviously, if it's his house and he's wearing gym shorts and no shoes, he's not expecting any sort of formal conversation. I wouldn't even get off the couch. I would just smile and wave and let him do the talking. If Harry wants to be just Harry, treat him like just Harry. A big part of Meghan's seduction was treating him like just Harry, pretending she had no idea how royal and famous and important he was. And the whole broken pipes thing is very, very funny. These are classic British manners. A casual self-effacement, rather than accepting a compliment with any pride whatever, and they read as positively perpendicular to the point Meghan is trying to convey about her status, superiority, and control. The day before, while Meghan was on the photo shoot for this issue, Harry had been left to his own devices, he tells me. You were gone for like 10 hours yesterday, he marvels to his wife. Tell her the first thing you said when you got back last night, he says, turning to me. She said, I'm not a model. I was like, no, you are. Of course you can be a model. And she's like, I'm a mom. And it's like, you can be both, Harry says, earning himself so many points. For all of his flaws, Harry loves this woman. He really thinks she's a beautiful model. He's really unable to see the essence of the woman he married. He's truly unable to recognize the flaws in the mother of his children. It's sweet and exasperating. I'm sure if you asked his grandmother to describe him, that's what she would say. Sweet and exasperating. In October 2020, the couple launched Archewell, a catch-all company for their post-royal pursuits. Thus far, it has 3 divisions: the nonprofit that puts compassion into action, according to the website, Archewell Productions, which oversees the Netflix deal, and Archewell Audio, which oversees the Spotify deal. Now, it's been recently publicized that in the past year, Archewell received less than $50,000 in donations and donated only a fraction of that. And of their donations, they were typically made with the expectation that their donation would pay for their travel expenses and appearance fee to garner more publicity for any given charity without actually giving the charity any cash. So they're both attempting to profit off of their association with charities rather than actually fund worthy causes, and they're failing to do so. A further embarrassment. The two run Archewell from their shared home office, specifically from 2 plush club chairs placed side by side behind a single desk, facing into the room like thrones. Most people that I know and many of my family, they aren't able to work and live together, Harry says in passing as I take a peek at their command center. He enunciates family with a vocal eye roll. It's actually really weird because it'd seem like a lot of pressure, but it just feels natural and normal. I don't think so. I think you're extremely codependent, Harry. Most people don't like working with their family members every day, or they have quite strict rules about not discussing work during family time and vice versa, because otherwise work takes over your life. It's not that they aren't able to, it's that they don't want to, because they are capable of making distinctions between public and private life, and they are capable of setting boundaries in either sphere. You, Harry, are inexperienced and have a baseless natural sense of superiority, and that allows you to be easily manipulated into thinking that with Meghan, you're working smarter, not harder, when in reality, you're not working and it's not working. The week I visit, things at Archewell are particularly busy. In addition to a trip to Africa for Harry, on behalf of the charity African Parks, Meghan is launching Archetypes, which aired its first episode on Spotify on August 23rd. There's another trip in the works on which they'll both speak at a handful of charity events in the UK and Germany, including one for the lead up to the Invictus Games, an athletic tournament for wounded veterans Harry founded in 2014. After all the drama, it looks like they've designed the exact job they wanted to have as royals, but were denied. Counterpoint, they could have had this exact job as royals, and they refused to do it. African Parks, Invictus, Centabale, these are all leftover patronages from Harry's time as a royal. Touring the UK and Germany to speak at charity events is exactly the sort of thing working royals do. They pretended royals were doing things the wrong way and they didn't want to do it, but here they are, pseudo-royals, cosplaying as royals. I think we always knew the first few years of creating this new life from scratch were going to be the busiest, says Harry. Well, it's a startup, Meghan interjects. We're building a business. During lockdown, and then Harry interjects, with everyone weighing in. If you do something, they criticize you. If you don't do anything, they criticize you anyway. It's a lot, but... Oh, and then having a baby in the middle of it all, casually, Meghan jokes. Their daughter, Lilibet, was born in June 2021. Ha! We're supposed to believe that they've been busy. They've provided little to no content for Netflix or Spotify. They've raised almost no money for charity. And Meghan, this is not a startup. You're not a new app. You're not raising VC funding in rounds. You're two dolts sitting in club chairs. So far, there's been little consumable content out of Archewell. The first announced project was a behind-the-scenes docuseries about the Invictus Games, which has yet to see daylight. Right, because Harry was trying to profit off of his own charity. How distasteful. Meghan had been working on Pearl, an animated series about a 12-year-old girl who steps into her own power by traveling through time to meet important women across history when Netflix axed it. There's not much you can do when a company and a division changes their slate, she says. And there's also not much you can do when, even if they think the project is great, the media will report it as though it was only my project. What does that mean? The media reporting it as if it were only her project? Are we actually getting some acknowledgement from the Duchess that she's a turnoff to some people? Because if you're hired to be a face of a project, that's exactly how the media treats you. And by the way, I don't think this concept is bad at all. I think it would be lovely to have a Dora the Explorer type of cartoon where a little girl meets amazing women from history. I think it's a great idea. According to reports in the Los Angeles Times, there's an air of impatience around that Netflix documentary specifically, and around what the couple is going to produce in general. Attempts to learn what those other projects might be or what their plans are met with an institutional paranoia by a team that responds to press inquiries as if it's protecting nuclear codes. Contact with non-approved employees invites fear and suspicion, confrontation, questions about rumored projects, for example, an At Home with Meghan and Harry type docuseries that reportedly has an attached director, Liz Garbus, and footage shot by teams of cameramen who have been spotted following the couple around, are met with half-answers shrouded in winks, codes, and redirection. Meghan herself gives off an effortless, arms wide open, relatable affectation. She dangles the glimpse behind the curtain while the machine in place around her slams the door. I love this paragraph because the reporter tells us how frustrating she finds them outright. Why invite an interviewer if you aren't going to tell them anything of substance? The author has really confirmed our perception that these two are so image conscious, they're literally trapped by their own egos. To them, it's more important to be perceived as perfect and better than the rest of us than it is to be perceived as trying to do something good, trying to fulfill their obligations, trying to make the world a better place, just trying. They'd rather play games than try. The couple has directly smashed rumors of a reality show, both in statements made to publications and in conversation with me. But, Meghan explains, there's a difference between a historical documentary and a reality docuseries. The piece of my life I haven't been able to share, that people haven't been able to see, is our love story, she says. Then quotes what she says was the end of a speech she gave at her wedding, in which she took comfort in the resounding knowing that, above all, love wins. She adds, I hope that is the sentiment that people feel when they see any of the content or the projects that we are working on. I think the reason why Meghan would like to do a historical documentary rather than any sort of docu-series is so that she doesn't have to work. It's a lot easier to look at old footage and gush about what was happening at that very moment, how in love you were and how perfect the world was. Or in her case, how terrible everything was and how difficult the obstacles they had to overcome were, and all of the invisible forces they needed to fight to conquer the world with love because they're such victims. I know that's the narrative that makes her happy. Above all, this just makes her seem vapid and lazy. They've made big promises about fighting misogyny, racism, climate change, poverty. Can't they see people care more about those things than knowing what they had at dinner on their third date? I ask again if what they are currently filming is a documentary about their love story. What's so funny is I'm not trying to be cagey, she says. I don't read any press, so I don't know what's confirmed. I will tell you Liz Garbus is incredible. Liz Garbus also worked on Pearl. Meghan says she's going to leave it to her publicist and Netflix to decide what can be shared. Not much. As for the rest of her projects, she explains, when the media has shaped the story around you, it's really nice to be able to tell your own story. Meghan, we don't believe you. We know you read all your press. This woman is so egotistical, she probably has Google alerts turned on for her name. How many hours per day do you think Meghan spends just researching herself? My vote, 4.5 hours, 5 hours per day she spends reading about herself. What do you think? Your eye contact is good, she says suddenly. You're like looking into my soul. I stammer out an apology. I feel it. It's good. I'm like so excited to talk. How weird. How very, very weird. Again, this is the observation of a sociopath, somebody who doesn't actually have human emotion, but observes it and is always trying to draw connections. The human feels X and expresses it by Y. Or maybe Meghan meant this in the sense of actors. People who maintain slightly overlong, googly-eyed gazes for the camera, rather than a normal social proportion of two-thirds eye contact, one-third randomly looking away to avoid causing discomfort, is the sociopath recognizing one of her own kind and complimenting their skills. Meghan was born and bred in LA, and her mother, social worker Doria Ragland, lives close enough that she can visit regularly for active, involved grandma duty. I ask if Harry feels isolated without any family nearby. Well, look, we're both building community, she responds. I didn't have friends up here. In addition to being new people in a new place, they moved in during COVID when everyone was isolated. They are creating a new thing together. No, nope. As written, it's unclear whether Harry is still in the room or not. Did she just answer this question for him? Being in an entirely different country with a very different culture and absolutely no family is completely different from just having to make some new friends a couple hours north of where you grew up. Meghan launches into a little story. Right now, they are trying to teach Archie his manners. We always tell him, manners make the man, manners, 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 manners. In one of those lessons, Meghan remembered something she'd learned at a young age from a friend's mom. Salt and pepper are always passed together. She said, you never move one without the other. That's me and Harry. We're like salt and pepper. We always move together. I wonder if Harry and Meghan frequently clash on things as basic as table manners, as well as broader points of etiquette. Because, in the US, we do have different table manners. I feel like Harry just doesn't mind if she does her own thing, or takes it for granted that Meghan does things the right way and all Americans should do things Meghan's way when it's not the case. Also, if I were the interviewer, I would feel kind of insulted. We're like salt and pepper, we always move together. Is she serious? These days, they are getting back out there together. Recently, Meghan says, they took Archie to a birthday party for a classmate. Everyone was surprised they showed up. I was in a bouncy castle and I saw this 1-year-old inside. I was like, where's your mom? And this mom on the outside goes, oh, hi, I'm here. I wasn't sure if I should come in. She laughs. I was like, do you need your child? Of course you can come in. Meghan, the woman was not asking you for permission. She was simply saying she didn't feel like going in the bouncy castle. Harry plays polo with the Los Padres. I'm kidding. Harry plays polo with the Los Padres in Santa Barbara. They spend time with a close-knit group of friends who have lunch and dinner at one another's homes, including former makeup artist and entrepreneur Victoria Jackson, who has become a close friend and safe harbor. They met through another close friend, Gloria Steinem. Jackson invented no makeup, made a fortune selling her products on QVC in the 80s, and has a sprawling ranch near Santa Barbara that she lent to Meghan for the photo shoot. Meghan had celebrated her 41st birthday there in August. The kids have been over to pet Jackson's mini pigs. Harry once fixed one of her sprinklers, and of course, Jackson is telling her story on an upcoming episode of Archetypes. I just want to genuinely show up for them, Jackson says of why she opened her home to Meghan so freely. To be able to get them out of their house because it's complicated for them to go anywhere. You know what I mean? I want Harry to be able to come up here for their birthday or share a time, and people to know that I'm not telling anyone when they're here. So I want to keep it that way, so don't give out my address. She laughs and then sighs. I hope that people take their foot off the gas a little bit on all the negative spin because they're really good people. Sure. Victoria Jackson sounds like a lovely neighbor. That's it. Americans are usually pretty good neighbors, I think. There's nothing that affirms a right place contentedness more than a trip back to the place you felt you had to leave. In June, the couple attended some of the events for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee in London. It was their first time appearing at a public event alongside the rest of the royal family since they'd left. While there, Meghan had quietly seen to more personal matters, slipping back into their former residence, Frogmore Cottage, to pack up their belongings. The cottage is still theirs and has remained mostly untouched since they left. You go back and you open drawers and you're like, oh my gosh, this is what I was writing in my journal there? And here's all my socks from this time? The blue and white linen pants she's wearing today were something from the cottage, actually. They're like $30 pants from Bowden, and I brought them back. It was surreal to walk right back into the life she'd been building in that cottage. There were all the things she'd had shipped from her old apartment in Toronto and barely gotten to unpack. Her sofa, posters of art she'd collected traveling with her girlfriends and thrown into good old IKEA frames, a past message from a single self she hadn't fully wanted to leave behind. We know that Eugenie, her husband, and her baby were living in Frogmore Cottage. Aren't they still there? They probably tossed Meghan and Harry's personal belongings into a guest bedroom or a closet and locked them. The weird part is that Meghan felt she had to revisit her material past. Like, what was she looking for? Did she need a pair of socks? It's one thing if you're staying there, you want your clothes, your sheets, your pillows, your towels. But if she's trying to sound relatable by talking about clearance section Bowden pants and IKEA frames, it's not working. The home renovations have been a sore point both for the couple and for the British tabloids. They have been criticized for using an exorbitant amount of taxpayer funds, £2.4 million, $3.2 million, for the upgrades on a home they'd been given. Public funding of the royal family is a conflict as old as the Queen Mary Bandeau tiara Meghan wore on her wedding day. Headline after headline suggested that the renovations were more extravagant than they actually were. There was never, for instance, a yoga studio with a floating floor, never a gold bathtub or a copper bathtub. There wasn't a special wing for her mother. They've since repaid the renovation costs. So let's work through this bit by bit. The public paid for their wedding and their house, believing that they would be working royals for the remainder of their lives. They breached their contract, they don't get paid. It's that simple. As for the tiara, I thought it was lovely. Everyone is pretending the Queen loaned Meghan a third rate tiara due to personal bias, and I could not disagree more. Meghan presented herself as this humble, minimalist, modern, elegant woman, hence the travesty of a wedding gown. I think Queen Mary's tiara was a perfect match. In my opinion, it's one of the few tiaras that looks equally as good with tailleur as fleur. And let's talk about the Frogmore Cottage reno stories. I never read stories about floating floors or gold bathtubs. This is not real. This is another example of Meghan making up some straw man story about the media. At this point, I feel like starting a blog called No One Ever Said That. Just to keep a record of all the things Meghan says people said that no one ever said. It was bittersweet, knowing none of it had to be this way, Meghan says. And that's a wrap on the real estate follies of H&M. Let me know in the comments below, do you think they can afford to continue living large? Or do you think they're living way beyond their means and in 5 or 6 years they'll somehow forget about the racism and violence of the United Kingdom and move back to live off of Charles? Let me know in the comments below. See you in the next installment.